Today I got a story for you guys that I just know that you'll enjoy because it is a story of a bully who's been bullying kids for the longest time, and finally he messes up and bullies a kid in front of a very savage teacher that has a pretty great response and absolutely destroys him. I know you'll enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new. And let's call today's subscriber who submitted this story, let's call him Jake. So anyways, there was a kid in Jake's grade called Ben, and he was known as Ben the Bully. His name wasn't actually Ben, but I just thought of that off the top of my head, and Ben the Bully sounded so smooth off the tongue, I had to go with it. So anyways, right, Ben the Bully had been the bully since kindergarten. They went to a school where it went kindergarten through 8th grade, which is, it was like you're there for the long haul, and they were currently in 7th grade. And Ben had been Ben the Bully since kindergarten. Obviously, he progressively got worse and worse since kindergarten, but he started all the way back, during the toddler era, man. He was a menace for a very long time. So anyways, this all starts on one day when Jake is just walking through the hallway, right? He's got his backpack on, he's walking to his next class, and Ben bumps into him. He's like, "Watch where you're going, man." And the thing was that Jake was actually actively trying to avoid Ben, but Ben, as if he was some tracking Mohawk missile, kind of aimed into him and slammed into him. It was pretty obvious that it wasn't an accidental bump, but it was a very clear two people going into each other and bumping into each other. So Jake was like, "Sorry." Like, he didn't say it with a lot of, I don't know. He obviously didn't say it meaningfully because he didn't bump into Ben. Ben just slammed into him and said, "Watch where you're going." Very typical bully behavior, right? Because it wasn't like Jake and Ben were boys. They hated each other. Or at least Jake hated Ben. I don't know. Maybe Ben thought that all the people he bullied were secretly his best friends. But let me just give you a little spoiler. That was not the case. But anyways, Ben goes on to say, "Huh? Say it with some respect." And Jake was like, "I'm sorry. Like, I'll try not to bump into you next time." And Ben's like, "Yeah, man, that's what I thought." Sure enough, Jake goes over to lunch because he was walking from his class to lunch, and he sits down with his friend. He's like, "Man, that Ben kid, like, he's been such a pee-pee." He said other words, but YouTube, you know how it is, guys. Since kindergarten, man, he has sucked for the longest time, and he just doesn't get it. We all hate him. He sucks. We don't like him. Like, someone's got to stop him at some point. And the other kids at, Jake's lunch table are like, "Well, okay, dude, we're halfway through 7th grade now. We got another year, and then we graduate. We go to high school. He's in if he's in the same high school as us, then maybe he'll grow out of it." Basically, they were saying that, "Yeah, man, we're not gonna do anything about it." And Jake started to realize that, yeah, there wasn't a lot they could have done about it because the teachers were well aware, and they were like, "Oh, Ben, stop it. Stop it, Ben." Obviously doing nothing, right? Complete disaster. And sure enough, Jake is walking to his class when he sees Ben picking on the nerdy kid. Okay, look, here's the thing. The nerdy kids, they make the money out of school, ladies, so don't be ignoring them, bro. I mean, those nerdy kids are going to be walking out with those six-figure tech jobs out of college, so all I'm saying is maybe you should be paying them a little more attention. But anyways, right, the nerdy kid, he wore glasses. If you wear glasses, you aren't a nerd. In fact, you look kind of smart if you have the right pair of glasses. For today's sponsor, I'm kidding. No one wants to sponsor my channel for some reason. I don't know. And all the sponsor links are obvious scams. I'm not going to click on it. I'm not an idiot. Anyways, so the nerdy kid, right, who's going to make bread out of college, but he is the nerdy kid, and he had glasses. He fits the stereotype. I don't know how else to say it. Ben went up to him and bumped into him as well. And he's like, "Watch where you're going." And Jake is watching this go down. And sure enough, right, Ben, is looking at the nerdy kid who says, "Hey, for disrespecting me, it's an eye for an eye." And the nerdy kid's like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm sorry I bumped into you." And Ben reaches out to the nerdy kid, grabs his glasses, and slams them on the ground. Thankfully, the nerdy kid didn't go completely blind without glasses, But obviously, it was a major inconvenience. And he was like, dude, why would you do that? And Ben's like, you just got to be more respectful next time, man. And he kind of bumps off to the next class. So Jake and Ben, the bully, had a class together. Their class was the last class of the day. And Ben was a big butt the entire time in that class, always. So Jake just like had a real, he was just like, man, this guy really sucks. Jake always knew that Ben was kind of a terrible person, but it really was solidified in his mind today that this guy sucks, man. He's the worst. I don't know how else to say it. It just is what it is. So while Ben was kind of a jerk in just like in general and also in this class, he never really did it blatantly. He was always somewhat concealed with his bullying while in the presence of a teacher. Because one thing that was kind of weird was that, or not weird, but an interesting kind of a character study was that Ben the bully, in a lot of cases, you know, the people who are the bullies in the school, the only thing they do is like be jerks to other people and they don't really, you know, focus on their grades. But this guy was both a bully and also a try-hard. And by the way, being a try-hard is good. Props to you if you were try-hard, because I've try-harded in the past. I've also not try-harded, and being a try-hard's good. You'll do well. Good things will happen mostly, and unless you're annoying about it, just be cool and also try hard. Anyways, the bully also sweated for his grades. He really went in and he tried to get straight A's and everything. I think he kind of had a I need to prove I'm better than everyone complex, and also that was exuberated through his excessive grade, trying to get the perfect grades, and also bullying people. The first thing's totally fine. If you want to get good grades to feel better than everyone else, I don't care. Get those grades, whatever. But you can't be bullying people, right? So anyways, all you need to know that Ben the bully really cares about his grades. So that's probably why he was a little bit less blatant, right? He was a little less blatant when he was in class. But one day, on this day specifically, he slipped up. So there's a kid who transferred into their school about a week ago, which was very weird because it was about midway through the semester, and normally new people come in the beginning of the year. But, you know, life happens, and for some reason, this kid had to come in midway through. And it's very difficult to make friends midway through if you come into an already established grade. It can be done, and I've seen it done, but it's definitely more difficult, and, you know, my heart goes out to anyone who has to deal with that, or you're constantly moving. Making friends is hard, man. I mean, I spent my freshman year in high school completely struggling, which gave me the life lessons that I need to try if I want to have friends. They will not just immediately come to me. And it's a good thing for me to learn. But anyways, there was a new kid, and he wasn't doing so well in the friend department. So Jake, who was just feeling really good that day. Oh, Ben the bully, was feeling really good that day. He bullied Jake. He bullied the nerdy kid. He was on a win streak, man. He just wanted to top it off. He just wanted a little bit more that day. And in class, he was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to bully this kid. So Ben the bully, Jake is in this class, remember, it's the last class of the day, looks as Ben the bully walks over to the new kid who just came in a week ago, and is like, hey, buddy, looks like you're struggling in the friend department. It sucks. I don't know. Maybe if you were just, more likable, you would have had more friends or something. This little pro tip from the pros. Just a really snarky comment, something along those lines. But Ben the bully made a mistake here because the teacher overheard this. The teacher turned around and looked at Ben and said, Ben, knock it off. Don't be a jerk. And Ben was kind of taken aback by this, but he must have been on some power high. He must have been some kind of neurons unlocked in his brain when he bullied the third person in one day. The power gauntlet is on his fist because he bullied 3 people. He got all 3 Infinity Stones. I don't know. For some reason, he was on something, is what I'm trying to say. Because he looks at the teacher and responds very calmly after being a little shocked that the teacher talked back to him and said, or what? And the teacher said, or I'll send you to the principal's office. In fact, I will send you to the principal's office, and that's where you'll be going. And everyone kind of turns their head because Ben, while being a notorious bully and a pretty blatant jerk, never really broke the rules in class, and in fact, rarely ever made it to the principal's office. It only happened earlier in the year, or not earlier in the year, but when he was like 3rd grade, 4th grade, but then he learned how to game the system. He learned how to go right up to the edge of being a bully, but not really getting in trouble. And that's a lot. In all these cases I told you about, he would always have a way to weasel his way out of it, but not this time. So Ben, for the first time ever, has been cornered, and he decides to act defensively. And once again, Ben says, well, what are you going to do? Drag me there? Because I'm not going to walk to the principal's office. So the teacher is kind of taken aback by this as well. It's like Ben and the teacher have been continuously startling each other with their responses. So the teacher thinks for a second. And the teacher knows that Ben really does care about his grades, because Ben sweats very hard in that class. He's a try-hard in the class, which is good, remember. Try-hard has a negative connotation. I think it's a good thing, personally. And the teacher goes up to Ben, the bully, and is like, well, you know this class has a very large aspect of participation within the grade. If you don't go to the principal's office, I will fail you in the participation. And Ben, the bully, looks at him, and this time, he's scared. He's like, you can't do that, man. You can't do that. And the teacher's like, why? You're distracting everyone else right now. You're taking away from their participation. You don't think that there are negative effects on your participation grade? You think it's 100% how much you talk? Real quick comment, bully down below, as that is the secret word of the day. I just like to see how many people make it this far. And also, if you want to support the channel, make sure to watch a bunch of videos after this one. If you binge watch a bunch of videos now or later, please let me know, as it really does support the channel. Anyways, at this point, remember, Ben and the teacher have had this little back and forth. Ben got caught bullying the new kid. The teacher told him to knock it off, and that he will be sent to the principal's office. And that Ben refused to walk over there. So now the teacher, knowing that Ben really cares about his grades, is threatening to give him an F in participation, which was like 15 to 30%. It was like a large portion of the grade, large enough that a fail on that would really suffer the overall grade. So Ben at this point is like, you can't do that. I participate all the time. And the teacher responds, well, you're inflicting negative participation right now, as you're taking away from the classroom experience. Don't think participation only goes one direction. I can take it away too. And also, who writes your grades? I do. Go to the principal's office, or you'll receive an F in participation. At this point, right, the teacher thinks he has kind of like a checkmate here, and basically forcing him to go to the principal's office or receive an F, which he knows that he does not want to receive. Ben, however, has never been checkmated. He's always been the master. He's always been the chess grandmaster. Everyone else was playing checkers while he was playing chess. And for once, he was dethroned, and he just couldn't take it. I think something really snapped in him, because he has never had his throne challenged ever before. And this is when Ben stands up, puffs out his chest, and walks over to the teacher and says, I'm going to choose option C, neither. You're going to give me an A in participation as I participate, and I'm not going to go to the principal's office for making fun of a dweeb. And he points to, like, the new kid. First of all, who says dweeb anymore, bro? That was, like, what you called a nerd in the 1980s, bro. Get the archaeologist, dude. I think we found a fossil. I'm just kidding. I'm playing. But anyways, right. He goes up to the teacher, and he's got his chest pumped out. And the teacher is not, like, threatened or anything. He's like, is that a threat? And Ben says, I don't know. Maybe. All I know is I'm getting an A, and I'm not going to the principal's. And the teacher said, all right, well, yeah, I'll give you an option C. Do you choose option C? And Ben, thinking, well, yeah, it's neither, says, yeah, I choose option C. And the teacher says, great. All right, go to the principal's office, and you're getting an F on participation. And Ben, when he heard this, just couldn't hold back anymore. He's like, I'm going to give you a count to 3 to turn that back, to change it, to give me an option D. And everyone's like, lol, you want that D, bro? He's like, shut up. I'm going to give you a count to 3. 3. Teacher's just looking at him. 2. Teacher's just looking at him, a little smirk. 1. And Ben said, don't think I didn't warn you. And he raises his fist. He's about to punch the teacher, everyone thinks. He goes in and he swings, but the teacher simply just steps to the side. Ben runs straight into the back of the wall, head and fist collides with like the whiteboard. The whiteboard actually cracks a little bit because Ben's a pretty big guy who just slams into it, and he literally collapses to the floor. And the teacher, the most baller move of all time, the teacher stands above him and looks down and is like, you can't even land a punch, dude. Sad. And at this point, right, Ben's entire world crumbled before him because his reputation of being the big scary bully man completely faded away. So sure enough, right, the teacher actually does call up the security, tells them what happens. They come down and they take Ben away to go to the principal's office. And so Jake is just sitting there in class, witnessing the whole thing go down, and is just thinking to himself, the reign of Ben is over. The reign of terror is finally done. And sure enough, the aftermath, the teacher did not give him an F for participation, but he made him read out a long apology to both the teacher, the class, and the kid he bullied specifically in front of everybody. He also got a week of detention for trying to fight the teacher, right? Which is pretty light compared to some other stories I've received. And from that point on, Ben was still a jerk, but he wasn't a blatant bully like he was before because he was scared because the school told him that he was on thin ice and any other reports that were similar were going to get him in much, much more severe trouble than he already was. Today we got a story time of this bully that gets completely owned by the principal. It's pretty hilarious. I know you'll enjoy it, so stick around, subscribe if you're new, and let's call today's subscriber who submitted this story, let's call him Blake. So anyways, this all happened when Blake was in high school. And in high school, they had lunches. And for your lunches, you had to bring in your own money. I know different schools kind of do it differently, but at Blake's school, you had to pay for the lunches and you had to bring in money every single day. And almost like the most stereotypical bully on planet Earth. Like when you think of a bully in a TV show, they're coming for your lunch money. And no, this bully legitimately came for Blake and the other kids' lunch money. Like, this is basically reading a fairy tale at this point. But anyways, right, I digress. So this was just another day that, Blake would go in, he would have his money, and he would just honestly pray every single day that he walked into the cafeteria, every single day that he went to try and get some lunch. He was just praying that the big kid, there was this one big kid who was the bully. We're going to call him Ben the bully. And also because whenever I have a secondary character, I immediately call him Ben because I'm not that creative. But anyways, right, Ben would come over and there would be two other people with him that were also kind of like the bully sidekicks or kind of like, kind of just to add another layer of intimidation. Ben was already a pretty big kid, and the other two kids were pretty big as well, and kind of the three of them would come over, and they wouldn't explicitly threaten violence, but you kind of knew that if you weren't giving the lunch money over, that things were going to be tough for you. For example, there was this one kid, I'm not going to give him a name. He's not coming up again in the story. Who said, no, I'm not going to give you my lunch money. And his life was kind of miserable until he did. For example, they would walk by him, slam him into walls, push him over, and kind of like run away, trip him, intentionally destroy stuff of his. They ran it like a mob. They were basically the schoolyard mafia, man. Like, that's kind of how it worked. So anyways, right, this all started, or I guess it started for a while, but this story starts one day when Blake was coming in to the cafeteria, and man, all he wanted was just to eat some food. He just wanted to eat some food. And he walks in, and the thing was, right, it was about like one day out of the week, on average, that Blake wouldn't be able to have lunch because he'd have his lunch money literally taken from him. And Blake was really hungry on this day because he woke up a little bit late because he had to, I don't know, he slept in, or he's playing, video games too late at night, or just watching so many Connor Pugs videos that, which is a great time investment in my opinion, and totally understandable and worth the lack of sleep. But anyways, he came in, and for some reason, he didn't have breakfast, and he was starving, and he was just thinking to himself, please God, just let me eat today. And unfortunately, as he was walking up to the cafeteria, a big, large figure appeared from behind the cafeteria door with two smaller yet still pretty large figures behind him. And Blake immediately knew that this was Ben the bully and his two sidekicks. And Ben is like, Blake, my good friend, how are we doing today? And Blake is like, hello, Ben. Because they were not good friends. Blake already knew what was about to happen. He already knew why Ben and his two bully friends were standing there. He already knew what was going down here. There was no question about it. And, Ben is like, Blake, I hope you're having a good day today. And I also hope you're not too hungry today because, we run a legitimate organization around here, and kind of points to his two minions. And it's like, and it's tax collection day, man. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry it has to be like this, man. And Blake, in his head, is just like, it doesn't have to be like this. And, sure enough, he reaches into his pocket and, gives Ben the money. And as Ben's walking away, Blake's like, hey, like, I didn't get breakfast today. I'm really hungry. And just because Blake was trying to chip away a little bit at Ben and just see if the man had a bit of a heart. And Ben turned around and looked at Blake and said, man, that really sucks that, the day that you didn't have breakfast was the day that it was tax collection day. I'm so sorry, buddy. And they walk away to go get the next victim or whoever else they're going for. And Blake was really angry. Like, he always hated them, and he really hated the fact that they had this kind of, like, mafia-like power monopoly. Like, he thought that was ridiculous in the first place. But just for some reason, like, I think it was a combination of him just being fed up with it, and the fact that he was hungry, and the fact that when he tried to say, hey, man, I didn't have food, that, Ben was so smugly saying, oh, it's, oh, that sucks, man. It's part of tax collection day. That's so, just that combination really just pushed him over the edge. So later that night, he called up one of his friends. He's like, man, I am sick and tired of Ben and his goonies going around and, like, taking all of our money, taking all of our lunch money. It's ridiculous. It's against the rules. We need to stop this somehow. And this is when Ben's friend reminds him, hey, like, it's not like people haven't tried to report this in the past. Essentially what has happened is people have reported this to the principal, but Ben is very charismatic and he's very good at what he does, unfortunately. So Ben the bully would always be able to say, like, he would always come up with a reason, a counter argument of, this kid hates me because of X. He's making this up. You can search my lockers and myself. You won't find any money on them. They actually did Ben the bully and his other two mafia goonies, or like little minions or whatever, did a really good job of basically laundering this money. They got the money in, and essentially it was gone. They had a secret place to hold it, and then they immediately brought it back to their house. Like, they were not taking any risks. So when Blake and his friend were talking, Blake's like, yeah, well, the problem is people before, they didn't have any proof of this happening, because people before would just go to the principals or a school or teacher and basically rat on them and have no proof. And then Blake the bully would counter and be like, oh, this person, give a decent counter that he made up. And then they would find no evidence. And then the person who ratted, Blake and his two minions, would make their life a living hell, basically. So there was a huge incentive just to kind of deal with it and just give him the money every once in a while. And Blake was like, no, this ends now. I am done with this nonsense, and I think I have a plan. Real quick, comment bully if you made it this far into the video. I just want to see how many people make it this far. And also, please let me know if you're binge watching these videos, or if you didn't know, if you want to support the channel, go ahead and watch a bunch of videos in a row. It really helps me more than you can imagine. Also, just so you guys know, I've been doing YouTube for a while, and I feel like I'm pretty successful at this point. Over 500,000 subscribers, and there's a lot of stuff that I've learned along the way. And I just made, this was actually a couple months ago, I basically pulled an all-nighter making hours worth of video content, giving all the tips and tricks I've learned along the way, including what Mr. Beast told me on a phone call, because he actually called me back in 2017 and told me how to do YouTube, and here we are now. And essentially, right, I wanted to make those videos, and I wanted to give them back to, the people who support me a lot. And so, yeah, if you want to become a channel member, which is down below, hit the join button, and then go to the membership part on my page once you've joined the channel. There's probably like hours and hours worth of video content telling you how to be a YouTuber. There's not a lot of value in it if you don't want to be a YouTuber, just a heads up. So don't buy it if you don't want to become a YouTuber, but consider becoming a channel member if you want to learn all the tips and secrets or whatever. Anyways, that's enough marketing to you guys. Let's get back to the story. So anyways, right, just a little recap. Blake is done with having his money taken from him. He's done with it. And also at this time, Blake wants to kind of rat out Ben and his minions. And he's talking to his friend, and his friend reminds him that, people try to rat him out in the past, and it just doesn't seem to work. And Blake says, you know what? I have a plan. And here was the plan. Blake was going to secretly record the next time he had his money taken from him. And then he was going to report to the principal's office with proof this time. So sure enough, right, Blake, first of all, has to figure out how he's going to do this. He doesn't want to make it super obvious because then, the bully would realize that he's being recorded and, he's not an idiot. Unfortunately, he's not an idiot because he's cleaned up pretty well before. And so he needs to find a way to make it a very kind of secretive camera recording. So anyways, Blake goes on Amazon and is just looking for secret recording things, or Amazon, he's looking on online stores, and then eventually he finds it. He finds a hat that has a secret camera in it. And the secret camera in it will record and you can upload it to a phone or a computer. And he's like, this is perfect. So anyways, Blake starts wearing a hat to school. And as soon as he walks or right before he walks in the cafeteria, he turns his hat on. The other thing is this camera doesn't have any audio. So Blake is going to have to be very, very he's going to have to show that this guy is taking his money. But also to make up for the fact that the camera only has video, before he goes in, he turns on his camera hat, but he also opens up a voice memo on your iPhone. Basically, that kind of just is an audio recording, and he puts it in his pocket. And he tested it out with his friend, and if you're standing 4 or 5 feet away, the iPhone, just because of the way it was positioned, it was able to pick up on the audio. So while he didn't have a video with the audio, he had video and audio. So every single day before he went to the cafeteria, he would turn on his voice memo on his iPhone, put that in his pocket, then turn on his camera hat. He would walk in, and for 4 days in a row, he went in without any problem from Ben. And on the 5th day, he walks in, once again, turns on his hat, turns on his audio, walks in, and he's stopped at the door. And he's like, all right, this is my time. And Ben is like, all right, Blake, it's that time of the week. You already know what it is. And Blake's like, I don't know what it is. Can you remind me? Trying to act as dumb just to get Ben to confess more and more. And Ben's a little annoyed. He's like, man, we do this all the time. And Blake's like, well, can you remind me why I'm doing this? And Blake, or Ben, under kind of the assumption that he's totally safe, that he's totally fine, really just lets everything go, because normally he wouldn't be this reckless or this foolish, but he has no reason to believe that any of his words will be, recorded or something he wouldn't be able to dispute as a lie. So, Ben goes on to say, well, you know what happens to people who don't give us their lunch money? We make their life a living hell. You remember Adam, right? And Adam was one of the kids who told and then, got his life destroyed. He's like, you know how Adam always got pushed into the lockers? You know how Adam always had his stuff smashed and destroyed? You know how that all stopped when he started paying taxes again? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that interesting? So for that reason alone, Blake, I really think you're going to want to reconsider, not giving us your lunch money today. And if you do, no problems, no hard feelings. I'm not a bad guy. I just want you to know how it is. And Blake in his head is like, oh, Ben, you idiot. You fell for it this time. So Ben's like, all right, man, that's totally fair. Here's my lunch money. And then he says, I'm only giving this to you because, otherwise you're going to, you and your friends are going to come and attack me. And Ben's like, whoa, let's go easy. I didn't say we were going to. I just said that happened to happen. And then, so at this point, Blake's like, all right, I really want to get this guy. And Blake's like, oh, well, then I'm not going to give you money if it's someone else. So then Ben's like, yeah, okay, we'll come and beat you up if you don't give us this money right now. And Blake in his head is like, bro, this is perfect. How's he fallen for it this bad? And sure enough, Blake's like, all right, well, I just wanted to be clear. And Ben's like, all right, have a good day, sir. And the three of them walk off. Blake is hungry because he has no food. However, Blake is also very happy. Because he immediately goes, or not immediately, because he's just waiting for the rest of the day. He's so excited to get home, because he has to go home and process the audio and video and all that kind of stuff. He goes back home, and he's a little nervous when he plugs the hat into the computer, and he checks it, and then he also checks the voice memo. He's nervous just because if it's corrupted, he can't really pull that off again, or it'd be very difficult. And sure enough, the video is totally fine, and the audio, it's not crystal clear, but you can hear everything. There's no white noise or anything like that. You can hear everything. It's perfect. So the next day rolls around, and one of the first things Blake does as soon as he can is he goes to the principal's office, and he explains everything, and then he shows the video and the audio. And the principal is like, well, we've heard complaints of this before, and we have had our suspicions, but Ben has always been able to explain it away, but there's no way he'll be able to explain this away. The principal's like, do you mind if I come in? I don't want to get him right away. I want to see what it looks like in the wild. And, Blake was like, all right, man, like, if you're going to get him, I don't really care when you do. The principal's like, all right, perfect. So you might be seeing me at lunch today, but don't make a big fuss about it. I really want to catch him in the act. And Blake's like, hey, man, like, I'm cool with that. Anything to take this guy down, I'm really fine with. And so sure enough, that day at lunch, Blake goes in and he doesn't have his money taken from him because it's not the tax day for him. And he gets his food and he sits down and he's sitting with one of his friends. And his friend's like, hey, man, this was the friend that he was talking to on the phone with. He's like, hey, man, did you get the audio and the video? And Blake turns and says, just watch today. I promise. You'll see. And the friend's like, dude, what are you talking about? And Blake's like, dude, trust me. The friend's like, okay, I'm trusting you. And so Blake he's eating his food, but he's mostly looking around. He sees the principal sitting at the last table. And at this point, right, he looks up and he sees Ben, the bully, talking with another one of this kid. And he sees the principal looking at Ben. So then Blake kind of nudges his friend, is like, hey, dude, it's happening. And his friend's like, what's happening? And he points to the principal. And his friend's like, oh my God. And sure enough, Ben, the bully, is taking money from this kid when the principal walks up, and they're close enough to hear what's happening. And the principal says, Ben, and they points to the other two kids, you're coming with me for, bullying, harassment, stealing money from others, and multiple other charges, or whatever he said. And Ben's like, no, this isn't what it looks like. Like, I'm just, and the kid's like, points at Ben and says, this kid threatened violence if he didn't give me money. And the principal's like, all right, Ben, and you two, I think you're coming with me. Today, we get a story of revenge. Sweet, sweet revenge, baby. Let's go. Today, we have a story of a nerd who gets revenge on their bully. It's perfect. You'll love to see it. So sit back, relax, grab something to eat, maybe grab something to drink, subscribe if you're new. And let's call today's subscriber who submitted the story, let's call him Stuart. So anyways, this all happened when Stuart was in 7th grade. And there was a group of kids, and we're just going to call them the bullies, because there was multiple bullies, there was 3 bullies. And Stuart was a very smart kid, and let me just say, when I say the word nerd, I mean that with no disrespect. In fact, I bestow the phrase nerd as a badge of honor, because most likely that means you're going to go on to do great things and probably, get that back as well. And that's how but unfortunately, in high school and middle school, if you're good at something, the people who aren't as good at something, they're not going to be a fan of that. But anyways, right, so the situation was Stuart, when he was in 7th grade, throughout the entire year, it'd be a group of bullies that would basically kind of extort homework out of him. What I mean by this is a group of bullies every single day, or not every single day actually, a few times a week would go up to him and be like, hey, I need you to do this assignment, and if you do this assignment, we're not going to, pick on you, we're not going to beat you up, we're not going to make your life a living hell, basically. So it was an exchange of services for protection, but the protection was against the people giving the protection, so it really wasn't protection. It was like when the mafia boss comes in and says, hey, do you want to buy some window insurance? And you're like, why would I buy window insurance? And then one of the other mob guys throws a rock through it, and he's like, for reasons like that. or that type of like protection. So anyways, Stuart was like, he was kind of upset by this because he didn't have as much free time as he wanted to, because he was spending a lot of his free time doing the schoolwork for these bullies. So at one point he went back to his parents, and he talked with his dad, and Stuart was like, "Hey, Dad." And his dad's like, "Yes, son, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, there's been these kids who've been picking on me, and they've basically been forcing me to do their assignments, and if I do their assignments, they won't pick on me anymore. But if I don't do the assignments or refuse, they're going to make my life a living hell." And Stuart's dad, was similar to that. Like when he was a kid, Stuart's dad was some high-ranking professor somewhere. He was an accomplished man. But since, he had early interests in these fields when he was a kid, he experienced similar harassment before. So he kind of understood where this was coming from. So he kind of gave a few words of advice to Stuart. He said, "Stuart, you got to make sure that all the teachers or anyone who can help you helps you. But also, if that's going to make your life worse, I understand, and you need to make the right call." And then Stuart's dad goes on to say, like, "Just so you know, this doesn't happen forever. Like, what you have is great. You're an incredibly smart kid, and your life will be great because of it. The next couple of years will probably be tough. I'll be here for you, but since I was in your position, I also understand that sometimes when parents get involved, it only just makes things worse." And, Stuart took from that was like, hey, my dad's been through this before, he gets it, and some things just suck. And let me just say that if you're in this situation, do definitely contact an adult. I'm sorry if it happens, life does get better, but there are people around that will help you. But anyway, Stuart decided that no, he was not going to be passive about this. He was not going to let the next couple of years go by and, kind of have no ability to do anything in his free time, to hang out with his friends, to discover his passions. No, he was not going to let that happen, because he had a perfect plan. Because after having a conversation with his dad, Stuart started to get angry at these bullies for extorting, for kind of like using their power over him, their physical strength, their ability to kind of like, harass him, and using that as leverage to get something done for them. And Stuart wasn't having it anymore. So he thought to himself, you know what? I'm going to figure out a way not to just not do the homework once, but to get rid of this problem forever, so that I never have to deal with it ever again. So Stuart goes up to his room, he concocts a plan, and it's perfect. So this was close to the end of the year, right? This was close to the end of the year. And Stuart knew that the three kids that he always did the homework for, he didn't do their homework, he didn't do their class assignments, he didn't do their stuff, all their stuff. The stuff that Stuart did for them, he did really well. He got 90s and 100s on. But Stuart also knew that these three bullies were doing a lot of the work themselves as well, because sometimes it was just too much of an effort to go out and find Stuart. Also, they skipped class a lot. And because of that, Stuart knew that all three of them were very close to failing the 7th grade. Very close, in fact. And that Stuart was thinking, so close that if on their final assessment that I know that they're going to give to me, if I happen to do really poorly, they would all fail and have to repeat the 7th grade. And therefore, I wouldn't have to deal with them anymore. Because in Stuart's school, 8th grade was in an entirely different building than 7th grade. So if Stuart was able to make all three of them fail, then he wouldn't have to deal with them unless they went out of their way, and they'd probably just find someone else at that point. So anyways, Stuart concocts his master plan, and it's like the last couple weeks of school, and the bullies come up to him and be like, hey, you know about our major assignments in our classes, right? Stuart's like, yeah, I'm aware you guys have major assignments. He's like, you better do them well. You better do them on time as well, or your life's going to be a living hell for the entire 8th grade. And Stuart just looks at them. And he knows he needs to keep his composure. He's like, I understand, guys. I'll do a good job. And when they walk away, he just has a big old smile on his face. Real quick, comment bully down below if you made it this far into the video. I just want to see how many people made it this far. And if you want to continue supporting the channel, all you got to do is keep watching these videos. Like if you just sit down and binge watch these videos, it really boosts the channel more than you can imagine. And I really, really do appreciate it. Let me know in the comment section if you are binge watching the videos. As I want to say thank you. I haven't been super active in the comments, but there's a very special project that I think some of the OGs, like real OGs of the channel, will be very excited for. And I'm sure a lot of the new people will like it too. But it's taken up a lot of my time. But I'm incredibly happy doing it. So you're going to see probably 1 upload per day instead of 2, and I won't be as active in the comments, but trust me, it will be worth it. Anyways, let's get right back to the story. So anyways, right, the final week comes, and Stuart starts receiving major assessments, major projects, major quizzes for his own classes, and he's able to get those done pretty, he's able to do them well and do it fairly quickly, because Stuart's a very smart kid. And that's when the bullies start giving him their major assignments. And so Stuart starts going through, and he needs to complete the assignment. He can't do nothing and hand it back to them. He needs to answer everything and not make it super obvious. It's not like they're going to check, but he can't just start scribbling stuff. He has to actually write stuff down, but it has to be totally and absolutely incorrect. It needs to be so incorrect that the teacher is going to pain themselves to even give a drop of extra credit. It has to be that absurdly wrong. It has to be like, what is 1 + 1? The answer is dinosaur. Like, can you even give 1% of extra credit for writing down dinosaur next to 1 + 1? I don't think you can. And that is the level of absurdity Stuart was trying to go for. So as Stuart starts going through it, he has a bit of thinking to himself. He's like, I know I'm in a bad situation, but is it really fair for me to fail all these kids? So Stuart goes to his dad. He sits down and he explains to him what's going on. And his dad is like, it's definitely not a great thing. It's not a great thing for you to do. But at the same time, these kids have been using you, and, how do they know that what you're doing is correct? They're literally just turning in what they force you to write. And Stuart's dad said, it's a little morally questionable, but I'd rather you do this and have at least a decent rest of your, high school experience or middle school experience. He said, don't tell your mom about this, because she has a pretty big heart and might not understand where you're coming from, but let this be our little secret. And so Stuart, with this little boost of a little hope, a little push from his dad, continues on and finishes all the assignments. He hands them out to the bullies, and they're like, thanks, you'll be seeing more of us next year. And Stuart in his head is like, I really don't think I will be. And so sure enough, right, a couple weeks go by, and finally summer is out, and Stuart needs to find a way of who's going to be if they actually passed, if they're going to be his grade next year. Correction, it is not actually summer right now. I misspoke. It is the final or it is the final day of school. So tests were handed in 1 or 2 weeks ago. And, Stuart really wants to know if these 3 bullies are going to be in his grade next year, but he doesn't really have a way to find out. So Stuart is waiting for his dad to come pick him up. And that's when he hears someone say, hey, and the 3 bullies walk up to him very angrily. Because Stuart got his grade back, and he got a 95 on all of his assignments, or something around that. And the 3 bullies said, man, you did so terrible on our assignments. We failed the 7th grade. We're going to have to do it again. And Stuart's like, oh, that's impossible. I did it all correctly. Did you guys hand in each other's assignments by accident? And the kids are like, no, we think that you messed them up on purpose to get back at us when all we've done is protect you. And Stuart was like, you've protected me from yourselves. And they say, it doesn't matter. Protection is protection. And you know what? Your protection is over. And the punishment starts now. And in the middle of the bully saying starts now, that's when a car pulls up. And it rolls down the window. And it's Stuart's dad, who is a full-grown adult, and looks over and is like, Stuart, time for you to get in. And he says, are these your friends? And looks up, and the 3 kids look back. And these 3 bullies were bullies, but they were 7th graders. They weren't going to fight an adult. And they're like, we got to go, man. So they walk away. And Stuart gets in the car, and Stuart's dad were like, I'm assuming those were the bullies. And Stuart's like, how did you know? He's like, well, they kind of looked like the kids that I was bullied by, and kind of gave the same energy. And I could just tell, man. And Stuart's dad said, so, will we be seeing them next year? Stuart looks into the horizon, smiles, and is like, I don't think we will.
Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it, do it.